Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I need to start with an apology for the 37-minute delay in the start of proceedings this afternoon due to IT issues within the Council chamber. I apologise to everyone listening and participating. First of all, anybody listening online, our media colleagues and anybody else from the public, and also to our deputations in the public gallery at the moment. Apologies to all concerned, and we shall do all we can to ensure that this type of situation cannot happen again. Okay, so beyond that, as I say, I want to welcome everyone to the meeting and to introduce the top table. And I have on my left Serge Morone, Strategic Lead, Economy, Development and Planning. Councillor Jack Welsh, Vice Convener of the committee. I've Adam Taylor from Democratic Services. And then I have Fraser Crofts, Strategic Lead, Environment and Infrastructure, together with Craig Daly and Matt Welsh. I've got two Welshes up at the top table this afternoon, which is a new record. From the Traffic and Network team. So I'll now ask the clerk to confirm any apologies received and to advise of the members in attendance and online.
Councillor Kogali, can I just confirm that you can hear us?
I can now, yes.
Excellent, thank you. All other members are present in the chambers. Convener.
Okay, can I ask everyone to use the chat box to attract my attention during the meeting in the normal manner? Before I go on to the formal business of committee this afternoon, I just want to take this opportunity to congratulate the Scotland national team on their magnificent victory last night in qualification for the finals of the World Cup, and I'm sure everyone in the chamber will agree that it was a fantastic event last night, whether they were there and present, in which case they've lost their voice, or some of us who are sitting at home watching it on TV are also a bit croaky. So congratulations from all at Perth and Kinross Council to the Scotland national team. Moving on to rather more normal matters, the declarations of interest, item 2. Can I ask if there are any declarations of interest in respect of the business on the agenda today? Not seeing any declarations of interest. Okay. Now, as regards item 5 on the agenda, I have a request for a deputation. Can I ask members if they agree to hear the deputation in relation to item 5? Thank you very much. Item 3 on the agenda is the minutes of the Economy and Infrastructure meeting on the 27th of August 2025. Are there any points of accuracy or any questions? Councillor Stewart.
Thank you, Convener. It's not a question of accuracy, but it was a follow-up to item 7, the renewable and low carbon energy supplementary guidance. And it was to ask, at the time, no decision had been made by Scottish ministers on the Market Hill solar farm appeal, but now that has come in, and it's the application's been refused, or the appeal has been refused by Scottish ministers, and I wondered whether the Scottish ministers' decision would be taken into consideration during the finalisation of the guidance.
Serge?
Thank you for your question, Councillor Stewart. Yes, obviously we are looking through the lengthy, justification for the decision, but we're taking that into account.
Okay, thank you. Can we agree the minute? Here. Moving on to item 4 on the agenda, outstanding business statement. Are there any questions on the OBS? Not seeing any questions. Oh, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you again, convener. Another question for Mr. Rowan, sorry. On the last item, number 31, the action there was to explore a mechanism for securing community benefit contributions. The update is about best practice in terms of discussions between communities and developers, which I think is more about what sort of community benefits are offered and how they're delivered, but in terms of the securing the community benefits, so that, for example, somebody doesn't offer something during the planning consultation process and then gets planning permission and then doesn't deliver on the offer. How, I just wondered whether we could leave that action open, because we were going to explore how the other local authorities, I think it was Highland and South Lanarkshire, off the top of my head, had managed to sort of make that a formalised arrangement. Thank you.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Stewart. Yes, you're right. That's covering a part of the issues there, the challenges, which is much more from the community side and how they can have the right information, engage with the developers. But the other side of it is effectively how we can explore, from a council point of view, guidance or whatever we want to call it, to effectively secure, optimize any community benefits from developers. So I'm happy to keep that open as a separate action if you want, or as part of that.
Okay, thank you. If there are no other questions, can I ask if the OBS can be noted and for the completed actions to be removed from the outstanding business statement? Thank you. Okay, moving on to item 5, which is the Viewlands School Exclusion Zone. And can I invite the deputation, Mr. Gordon McMillan, Mr. Gordon Mack and Mr. James White to come forward and make the deputation. Councillor Welsh will look after you, so to speak. So if I can explain, you have 10 minutes in total to speak, and how you divide up that time amongst yourselves, entirely up to you. And Councillor Welsh will let you know when we have 1 minute left of that 10 minutes, if you still require it. Okay, thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for taking time to listen to what we have to say today regarding the Viewlands Exclusion Zone. We are just a few voices here today, but please be aware that we are echoed widely across the neighbourhood. My topic on one specific subject for this whole issue, which I trust you have all read the documentation on and the various communications we've had with the council. My topic this afternoon is compliance. The problem which As I understand it, the problem the committee is being asked to address is the lack of compliance with the current traffic enforcement order. There has been very sporadic attention and attendance by Police Scotland throughout this issue to enforce the current regulations. No fixed penalty notices were issued by the police during the first 2 full years of the school exclusion zone. That is a major impact on whether this particular topic can be enforced or is in fact indeed worth having at all. Without proper enforcement and the issuing of fixed penalty notices, the zone will never be fully effective, no matter what size it is, no matter whether it covers one street or in fact the many streets surrounding the campus. The solution is to make the current exclusion zone work effectively or to remove it entirely. And that is the issue which this committee must agree on, in our opinion. Thank you, gentlemen. I don't have anything further to add on this, but I do expect there will be questions to follow, and I'll be happy to take part in that once my colleague has spoken. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm Gordon McMillan, resident at 20 Viewlands Place. Yesterday, just after 3 o'clock, there were 80 cars parked in Murray Place, Oakbank Crescent and Fraser Terrace. And under the proposals before you today, all of these vehicles and more will be directed by the council to attempt to park in Murray Terrace and Viewlands Place at the same time. We'd respectfully ask the committee members to consider what your response would be if that level of additional traffic were directed to park in your street. It would be a significant reduction in the level of our residential amenity for the local people in these 2 streets, which is also a safety concern given both streets are bus routes. And we can see no evidence that reducing the size of the zone in itself will improve driver behaviour and improve compliance.
John, just want to start. Hello. Right, my name is Jimmy White. I live at 18 Viewlands Place. Just the local views. The residents of Viewlands Place are strongly opposed to these proposals. In 2022, all the residents signed a petition requesting the Viewlands Place to be included within the zone. We could foresee the problems if this did not happen. Now, in response to the current proposals to exclude Viewlands Place from the zone, all the residents have signed a further petition opposing the proposals. Contrary to the papers, not all of the current ward councillors support the proposals. We respectfully request the committee to recognise our concerns and make no changes to the current exclusion zone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your presentations. Are you happy to take questions from the committee? Thank you very much. And can I ask if there are any questions from the committee? Councillor Forbes.
Mentioned, I'm really sorry, I forgot your name right at the start. Oh, right, I didn't forget it then, so that's reassuring. You talked about compliance, which is absolutely valid. I mean, we know this time and time again to our wards where we set speed limits and nobody sticks them because there is no compliance and the police aren't available to enforce it. How many times, if at all, have you called the police about this, and what has the response been from the police?
Well, we've contacted local councillors about it, and the response has always been that the police response is we'll get there if resources allow, and that's always been very sporadic. I myself have seen the police there just once, but the cases have been few and far between.
Just to add a small point to that, I have spoken to a number of people who parked in the area inside the exclusion zone when they should not be there, to ask why they're parked there. And this is generally in the area of parents waiting to pick up children from school towards the end of the day. The majority of them said they had no idea that there was an enforcement zone in place. No idea whatsoever. And if they did know, the ones who were aware of it simply said, I don't care.
Okay, thank you. Are there any more questions? Councillor Stewart.
Thanks. So, just to follow up on Councillor Forbes' question, the point about police attendance to enforce the school exclusion zone is a well-made one. Have the police voluntarily been in attendance at the without having to be contacted? Have they? Do they have a presence in the area at any time?
It's my understanding, and I can't speak for Police Scotland and how they decide these matters, but my understanding is that they've committed to attending whenever possible and whenever resources allow. But that tends to be, given the nature of calls on the police these days, very infrequent.
Thanks. And the second question. This was on the traffic displacement. Was it 80 parked cars? Why would reducing the size of the school exclusion zone move cars out of it? Sorry, move cars onto other streets.
My view is if there's no exclusion zone policed and enforced, people will park wherever they want and nearest the school.
One of the major issues, as I'm sure you're all aware if you've studied the street map of the area, is that this particular school area, campus as we tend to call it, is extensive. It extends to more than 20 acres. It's got 3 separate entrances. It covers 8 streets. How many police does anybody here think reasonably would be required to enforce that area on a regular basis? How many police, how many other traffic officials would it take to operate that? Be reasonable. Think about the enormous area that is required to cover that on a twice daily, 3 times daily, sometimes more basis. Gentlemen, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks, gentlemen. I appreciate that it needs the police to enforce it, but have council officers been involved in trying to educate or move people out of the area even though they can't enforce it? Has there been any, have you seen council officers or council staff trying to assist in this?
There's been a couple of consultations, certainly, which the council officers have sought to engage opinion, both online and some meetings at the schools themselves. So that activity certainly has taken place. I believe that the school head teachers will have informed parents about discussions and the outcomes of those discussions.
Are you asking about other officials of the council, like traffic wardens or other people? Is that what you're asking? None that I can recollect. When the school zone, exclusion zone, was first introduced several years ago now, the intention was to supplement or in fact remove some of the traffic warden situation or the traffic people who were guiding the children through the traffic. It's been replaced by better better traffic lights and crossings and so on. These have been very effective in how they've worked, but they haven't had any impact whatsoever on the drivers. And it's the drivers that we're talking about. It's the cars and the risk to the children more than anything else.
It's our understanding that the only people who can enforce this traffic regulation order are the police. For example, traffic wardens wouldn't have the authority to enforce that. That's a parking issue rather than an access and egress issue, which is restricted by the traffic regulation.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any more questions from colleagues. So, gentlemen, thank you for your time. You're welcome to attend as much of the rest of the meeting as you would like.
Thank you for giving us your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, can I now ask Fraser Crofts, Strategic Lead, plus Craig Daly and Matt Welch to present their report. Thank you.
Thank you, Convener. Members, just before committee considers the Viewlands School Exclusion Report, I would like to advise that unfortunately, due to an urgent family matter, Darryl McEwen, as lead officer for this report, is unable to attend today to introduce the paper and respond to any questions. With me, however, I have Craig Daly, Traffic and Network Manager to my far right, and Matt Welch, Traffic and Road Safety Project Officer, who will help to introduce the report. And along with me, we will answer any questions you may have as best we can. Thank you. Matt, if I could just hand to you.
The Viewlands School Exclusion Zone was introduced to improve road safety and promote active travel for pupils by restricting vehicle access during school hours. While initial compliance was positive, recent feedback and monitoring shows a decline, with traffic levels approaching pre-zone conditions. Key challenges include multiple access points and limited enforcement, which undermine effectiveness. A further public consultation exercise with residents and parents was conducted based on the proposed reduced exclusion zone. Feedback continues to reveal mixed reviews. However, the report recommends amending the traffic regulation order to focus restrictions on streets closest to the Viewlands Primary School, supported by enhanced enforcement and a coordinated publicity campaign. Additional pedestrian facilities are proposed to further reduce risk and encourage sustainable travel. These measures aim to restore compliance, protect vulnerable road users, and align with our commitment to road safety and active travel. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you for your report. I'm going to invite questions from colleagues, and Councillor Forbes, you're first.
Thanks for that, and I appreciate you guys turning up probably with about 5 minutes notice to answer our questions, and I think I can speak for all of us that we understand that we may not get all of the answers that we're seeking, but thanks for your attendance anyway. I remember back when we started the school exclusion zones, because Convener, I was sitting in your chair at the time, and it was a very contentious matter, and I think it was a previous road safety expert had drawn a big circle on a map around the school and said the bigger the circle is, the better, because if you imagine 100 people coming to a small circle, they're close together and the risk of accident is therefore higher than if they were coming to a bigger circle. Would you agree with that? And does that policy still stand?
Happy to start. Yeah, no, I mean, listen, the proposal, the initial school exclusion zone was implemented for all the right reasons. You know, when you look in the report and refer to section 3.2, the two key objectives to reduce congestion and associated road safety risk at the school gate, and to discourage dependence on vehicle transport by enabling people to walk to and from school. So the principles behind the school exclusion zone, I think, you know, remain valid. The extent to which the school exclusion zone is in place clearly has been a challenge for us in that particular locality. To be honest, I think it's disappointing. You know, the deputations there, you know, made reference to the aspects around behaviour change, and certainly that's what we would hope and expect from those who are within the vicinity in order to recognise that this is in close proximity to school, and therefore road safety is and remains the priority. Clearly, there are some specific challenges with the number of streets and the multiple accesses, and I think that's where we move from the position of that wider SEZ into one where we are proposing that we significantly reduce that. And indeed, in doing so, we would hope two things. One, that there will be better compliance, and secondly, from an enforcement point of view, it is actually more manageable and achievable with the limited resources from Police Scotland. Don't know if that answers.
Yeah, it kind of does. I appreciate that answer. You mentioned the specific issue about multiple accesses, and that is referenced in the report of 4.2. But it would be reasonable to say that that issue was there before we started the school exclusion zone, and therefore can't be having an impact on the size, whether the size is bigger or smaller.
But no, I don't disagree. I think the position that we have is we have to try and settle on something that's going to work. And at the moment, what we are clearly seeing is that what we have is not working, and that behavioural change hasn't taken place. So what we would hope to do by reducing is to promote and ensure better compliance. And as I say, the enforcement element of that should be easier for the police.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. It seems to be that the problem is picking up and dropping off children. And I noticed that, for example, Viewlands Road is a long road bordering the school. Why do we not have a pick-up drop-off facility on that road that parents can use, rather than have this sort of free-for-all of people coming from all directions? It would surely be a more sort of long-term solution to this issue.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think it's trying to find a balance to encourage people to, if not walk all the way to school, to try and walk a proportion of the way. And if we provide pick-up and drop-off areas very close to the school, then it's going to be convenient just to get driven to the school gates. And we perhaps won't get that behaviour change and encouraging people to walk or cycle to school.
The trouble is that people, in the wet days, people don't put their children at the house to walk to school. And I know at Kinross we've got a primary school, we've got a pick-up drop-off point, which is heavily used. And that's to try and stop the problem that we've got here at Viewlands. So I'd have thought it was a more sustainable long-term solution.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, Convener. At 4.3, the report states, restrictions should be appropriate for the road environment in order to be self-regulating and should not rely on a continued police presence. It's apparent from the comments there that it is neither self-regulating or being enforced, as far as I can make out. Do we know if any fixed penalty notices have been issued? A note, Matt, I think it was, talked about the way forward and enhanced enforcement. And given that can only be done by the police, I wondered what the police's view going forward might be, if they've had a change of mind in relation to how they might approach the issue. Thank you.
I'll start. So I'm not aware of any fixed penalty notices that have been issued by Police Scotland. As stated in the report in section 4.5, actually, 4.5. Sorry, not 4.5. We are looking to engage with Police Scotland going forward, certainly at the start of each term, in order to try and enhance that visibility and make it, as I say, more manageable for them to come into the area and provide that enforcement. And I think there is a commitment from Police Scotland to work more closely with us in that regard. They are aware of the issues here. They are aware that these changes are being proposed today at committee, and therefore we want to work with them in the coming months in order to enhance that enforcement position.
Okay, thank you. Now, Councillor Kogali.
Yes, I was wondering whether we've got any empirical data either way as to whether the size of the zone actually has an impact on behaviour. And I suppose it's tangentially connected, but if we have that kind of data on other types of, you know, traffic management, say the 20-mile-an-hour signs, for example, does generally reducing the area to make it, I suppose, more concentrated have an impact on driver behaviour? Or are we kind of just assuming that that's what's going to happen psychologically?
Yeah, we don't have any data on compliance, and I think realistically it would be pretty expensive. We'd probably need to set up ANPR surveys to try and get that data, or have police officers manning the entrance points. So yeah, I mean, it is we'll call it an assumption or a sort of educated guess that a smaller area should, and with less access points, should be easier to try and enforce. Just to add as well, we've had discussions with the school, and we'd like to try and get them involved in sort of campaign messages, maybe getting pupils involved to be out on site, and also support from our parking attendants to try and change the behaviour. And we accept that it's not a short-term thing; it's a long-term hope that, you know, the behaviour change comes in, and we do rely on people's behaviour to change. Yeah.
Okay. Is that okay, Noah?
Yes, I suppose as long as we've checked that data isn't, you know, maybe from other local authorities isn't floating around, that's fine. Yeah, I appreciate it would be very expensive to do that on our own.
Thank you, convener. On enforcement, I don't know if you can confirm if you've got details, but the action that was taken with the police, with traffic and networks and the parking wardens and Safer Communities teams back when the zone was enforceable, I think during the first or second, it came in May 2022. So I think it was in the first or second term, there was definitely activity, and the police definitely did issue some. The object was to engage and educate rather than enforce at that point, is my recollection. And the police definitely did impose some fixed penalty notices, not actually about what people were doing in terms of going into the zone, but other road traffic offences which they were caught for. I don't know if you have any recollection about those. And I just wanted to confirm also that the temporary traffic regulation order was only for 2 years. It started in May 2022. It's expired last summer. So we couldn't get the police to, we haven't been able to get enforcement action by the police for the last 18 months because there was not a valid traffic regulation order in place. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, the order, I think, is usually for a maximum of 18 months. There might have been some things in COVID, we could extend them further, but certainly, yeah, once that's expired, there was no enforcement capability. In terms of at the start, I don't know the answer off the top of my head whether fixed penalty notices were issued or not. I couldn't say either way for sure.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Welsh.
Thank you, convener. I think it's been clearly sort of stated by a number of people, including a deputation today, that the compliance is a major part of what the problem is. And I don't see anything at the moment that is really sort of seeking to sort this, because effectively what we're identifying is that the police have limited resources, and ultimately going forward, it's I can't see an awful lot changing. Is there any other way of looking at some of the tools that we may have to be able to use and utilise our own resources within the council in terms of our parking team? Understanding there's a decriminalised parking enforcement legislation that came in 2022. Can we not, if you like, create effectively a zone that effectively mirrors what is our current exclusion zone,
and decriminalise it, so it's not then police enforcement, but actually then allow our own enforcement officers to take this forward, so that in actual fact we have the resources to solve our own problems. Thank you.
I think with it being an access restriction, I'm not aware of any way we can decriminalise that. In terms of parking issues, we have decriminalised, but with it being an access restriction, I'm not sure that we can, unless there's something I'm not aware of that would allow us to do that.
I think it's worthwhile exploring to see if there's some form of workaround that can be done in that respect, because I think unless we can work out how to enforce this, I think we're going to be hugely challenged. Thank you.
Second question from Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Convener. I'm sorry, Fraser, another complicated one, and it's regarding consultation, and if you aren't able to answer, that's completely fine. I don't really know where to start with this one, but in 4.6, the phrase that jumped straight out of me was, but only 8 responses from the 321 were notified were received from residents and none from parents. And unlike the previous leader of the council, I actually think that we do consultation really well, or we certainly try our very best, and that's come through really clearly in this report. I think we've tried everything we possibly can. But Fraser, do you mind if I summarise what I think the issue is in regards to people's views, and you can maybe tell me if you agree or disagree? So I think the people who live within the zone want it to be big, and I think the people who want to drive their children to school want it to be small because it gets them closer to the school gates. Would you say that's a reasonable summary of where we are?
Yes.
Good. And a second question from Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, Convener. I think we recognise the issues are enforcement and behaviour change. I want to ask the team what the plans are going forward. I mean, with enforcement, we need to have a valid TRO in place before we can set up the arrangements with the police, supported by the council teams, to promote the new traffic regulation order, because it would really be a new order to replace the TTRO that has lapsed. Can I just confirm that if we approve the report today, road safety plan to start work as soon as possible on the relocation of the signs, etc. And key to that is the communication plan and the enforcement activities. And when would the revised traffic regulation order be launched? Would that be for the beginning of the next term?
I can maybe just start in terms of, and again, just referring back to paragraph 411, the approach there in terms of that coordinated approach with our own teams, Police Scotland, absolutely raising visibility with our parking team, but recognise absolutely that the comms piece in this is essential to really to educate and to raise awareness. It's a hearts and mind thing as much as anything. And in that respect, we will work with colleagues to push forward in that respect. In terms of the details around the TRO, Matt, is that something you can answer?
Sorry, regarding TRO, as soon as if the report is approved today, that is something the team will work on pretty much immediately, as well as the relocation of the signs. And we'll look to get those in before the end of the financial year, hopefully, but I can't promise that. It depends on resources as well. That is dependent on resources.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. I got a couple of questions here. First of all, I'd lived at the top of Fraser Terrace for quite a few years, and only for a short time, lunchtime, sorry, in the morning and the evening, there wasn't much of a problem. Biggest problem, of course, is if you ask them to move away from the front of your driveway, you get the height of abuse, which is to be expected. But it's all about safety. Okay, this is all about safety. So what are the statistics before and after regarding anything regarding maybe accidents, children getting hurt, etc. Can you tell me just how it's improved from before? Thank you.
So that's where I think I'm going to struggle with response in terms of any detail around accident or collision data. We'd have to refer back, as you say, to the very original position we had before the school exclusion zone, and what we have now, which is an unenforceable position because the TTRO is expired, and obviously what we plan to do in terms of the reduced size of the zone. So unfortunately, sorry, I don't have that information unless colleagues have either.
Seems strange that it's a safety thing around the school, that there's not this information at hand for us. And I mean, I don't know, the locals who, the deputation here might have more information regarding that because they're there if there's an accident happens, etc.
So say I don't have it to hand here, and that's not to say that it doesn't exist. We would need to pick up, I think, with Darryl as the lead officer, just to pick up on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thanks very much. My question is regarding paragraph 5.7 in the report, where there are a number of further measures for the area which are listed there. And I'm presuming that, irrespective of what we decide today, that these measures would continue. Are there any of these measures which would make a significant difference to compliance with the exclusion zone, which we should be prioritising? Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not sure on the detail of the projects. I know that Darryl discussed some of them with the ward members, and there's probably agreed measures to be put in place. I wouldn't imagine they're strictly reliant on the exclusion zone being agreed. But I think it was to assist with the enabling of people to walk and cycle to school, rather than expecting them to make a longer journey with some obstacles and obstructions in place.
Okay, are there any further questions? No. Councillor Stewart, no? Yeah.
Thanks, convener. Just a last minute thought occurred to me. So following up on the issue of enforcement by the police, I think we've established that we don't have the enforcement powers as a local authority, and it would sit with the police. And I know that it was reported that we had engaged with the police, certainly earlier on. I wonder whether it's I wonder in the wider piece how much enforcement of, because there are lots of school exclusion zones, but there's no point in putting them in if we can't enforce them, or if they're not getting enforced. So we must have data on compliance. I wonder if we could find out across the piece, not for now, but I wonder if we could find out across the piece how many fixed penalty notices there have been, and then potentially raise it through the community planning partnership. That's, you know, that should be a vehicle whereby we're working with the partners to achieve our common aims, and road safety would certainly be one of them. But if you could maybe take that afterwards. Thanks.
Absolutely happy to follow that through with Police Scotland.
Okay, thank you. It's really unfortunate that the senior officer responsible for this project has not been able to attend due to a family bereavement, which is obviously very unfortunate and very sad. And our thoughts go to Darryl McEwen and his family. I was going to move the report, but I think there have been so many questions that, with the best will in the world, officers have not been able to answer fully or to what I imagine would be the satisfaction of the members, and that's no criticism of the gentlemen who have come along today, but Darrell would have been able to answer several of these questions. So I'm going to actually move a deferral of this paper until the next meeting of committee in January. And I'm going to ask Councillor Massey to second, if he would.
Yes, I totally agree with you, convener. I think it needs more scrutiny, this paper does, so I'm happy to second that.
Thank you. Councillor Forbes, you have an amendment?
Yeah, kind of the view, I have to say, convener, that I think we've probably got as much information as we need, but I do take on board your points, and I think I'd be happy to accept your proposal that we defer this for another day. So I'll withdraw my proposed amendment.
Okay, thank you. So are we agreed to defer until January? Okay, thank you. Thank you to officers for doing their very best under very difficult and unexpected circumstances, and apologies to the people who have made the deputations, but we'll come back and we'll do this justice in January. Okay, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on to item 6 on the agenda. Moving on to item 6 on the agenda, Perth and Kinross Place branding. And I'm going to ask Kirsty Easton, Business Place and Investment Team Leader, to introduce the report and to deliver a slide presentation. Kirsty, thank you.
Thank you.
Just waiting for the presentation to appear on screen, hopefully.
Thank you. Can everyone hear me? So good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to talk to you about place branding, what this means for Perth and Kinross and why it matters right now. This isn't just about logos and general marketing, it's about shaping perception, creating identity and how we tell our story as a place, how we're seen by others and how others see ourselves. A clear, consistent identity helps us attract inward investment, visitors and talent, but just as importantly, it builds on civic pride and confidence. Many towns and cities across Scotland and the UK have shown how getting this right can change perceptions and open up new opportunities. We have the same opportunities here in Perth and Kinross. We already have the ingredients, our quality of life, our ambition and our distinctive sense of place. Today, I want to show you how we can turn that into a strong, unified brand. Next slide, please. As outlined in the committee report, work on a unified Perth and Kinross story began back in 2018. That was then with the Perth City Development Board and the Council, we commissioned a specialist agency, Thinking Place, to develop a place narrative and visual identity for the region. A strong foundation was created, a narrative, a visual language, a brand pack and a draft storybook, shaped by an extensive engagement process with stakeholders, businesses and communities. At the time, however, there were challenges around resources, priorities and governance, which meant the story wasn't fully launched or embedded. But fast forward to today, That context has changed, and we now have a stronger partnerships, clearer ambition, and a renewed recognition that Perth and Kinross needs a confident, joined-up identity to attract investment, talent, and visitors. The positive news is that we don't need to start again, and we can build on the strong foundation and take this forward with purpose. Next slide, please. So what do we actually mean when we talk about a brand? Most of us immediately think about logos, colours or fonts, and yes, those are important, but a place brand goes much deeper than visuals. It's about the story we tell about Perth and Kinross. It's who we are, what we stand for and what we offer. It's a shared language that connects everything we do, from how we talk about our communities and businesses to how we welcome visitors and attract investment. A strong brand helps everyone tell a consistent story, whether that's local businesses promoting their products, residents sharing pride in where they live, a community group running an event, or a partner organisation attracting funding. And when that story is told consistently, over time it builds recognition, trust and momentum both inside and outside the region. Next slide, please. Over the years, we've had a lot of different messages, campaigns and identities across Perth and Kinross, and at times the landscape has probably felt a bit cluttered. With this in mind, we're bringing more clarity and structure to how we communicate who we are. Our brand strategy is built around 3 interlocking narratives that work together, all leading back to the central focus of living life well. Each one speaks to a different audience and purpose, but they all come back to one shared Perth and Kinross story. This is really important to note, that these brands are not competing. They're complementary and reinforcing, with each one helping to tell a different part of the same story. The idea is that when you look at all our communications, whether that's an economic campaign, a visitor promotion, or a community initiative, you can see how it all fits together. That clarity will make it easiest for us as an organisation to use consistently, but will also make Perth and Kinross feel clearer and more recognisable. Next slide, please. So let's start with the first of those 3 narratives. The overarching story of place is the anchor narrative that underpins everything else. It positions Perth and Kinross as a place where people can live life well, a place to live, work, invest and visit. It connects the heart of the city with the rural hinterland and connects our communities with enterprise and the natural environment into one shared story. If we use this narrative consistently, it will help us build recognition, strengthen pride, and help us align messages with partners such as UHI Perth, Skills Development Scotland, the Chamber of Commerce, and other stakeholders. And it aligns perfectly with our ambitions as a region tackling poverty, promoting well-being and creating opportunity for all. Next slide, please. So what does all this look like in practice? This is where the story comes to life in the way we design, promote and experience our places. The Perth and Kinross narrative gives us a shared thread of how we can weave through everything from how we talk about our city centre to how we celebrate our towns and rural communities. Here are some examples of how the brand can be applied in different contexts through city centre improvements, town centre regeneration and how we communicate projects. There are more examples in your brand pack, but the aim is to make it feel joined up. So whether we're walking through the city centre, visiting Crieff, exploring Blairgowrie, there's still a sense that it's all part of the Perth and Kinross story. Next slide, please. Using a consistent look and tone, this message helps build familiarity and pride. It also strengthens how others perceive us. Forward-looking region that knows who it is and what we stand for. Over time, this kind of consistency builds recognition and emotional connection. Next slide, please. And again. So I'm going to talk about the Invest in Perth brand. This is a well-established and recognised our business and inward investment brand for the region. So this tells our economic story about Perth and Kinross. It's about growth, innovation and confidence, highlighting our strengths in clean energy, circular economy, agri-tourism and rural innovation. The aim here is to make sure Perth and Kinross is a clear and credible voice in a very competitive investment landscape. Invest in Perth helps us communicate that we're open for business, ambitious about growth, ready to work collaboratively with partners like SDI, Scottish Enterprise, Scottish Cities Alliance, and local and regional business networks. It also helps us build confidence among our own business community, reminding people that this is a great place to start and grow your business. Next slide, please. Some of the examples of how we've used the Invest in Perth brand, which we use a range of publications and channels, so including the Invest in Perth website, which speaks directly to both local businesses and investors, and also our Invest in Perth magazine, which celebrates its 10th year this year. The magazine has been a brilliant tool in helping us promote the region, share success stories, and showcase the innovation and ambition of forward-thinking leadership that really sets Perth and Kinross apart. Early this year, we also launched our £530 million investment prospectus at UK Reef, with feedback so far which has been very positive and is already giving us a platform to build stronger relationship with investors and key decision makers. These publications tell a joined-up story about our region's strengths and our potentials and have helped raise our profile with local, national and international audiences. Next slide, please. Our third narrative and final narrative is Perth City and Towns brand, which is the front-facing side of how we communicate with residents and visitors. The brand is mainly used to promote events, local campaigns, seasonal activity, and the website is a valuable tool for businesses. However, we are currently reviewing the brand identity and there's an opportunity now to take it further and make it stronger and an all-round year-round brand. This means connecting our heritage, culture, food and drink, outdoor experiences and independent businesses into one coherent story. We're already working on a new, easier to navigate website and planning campaigns that position Perth and Kinross as a perfect base for exploring Scotland, whilst also encouraging visitors to stay longer and spend locally. Next slide, please. Here are a couple of examples of how we've used this brand. As I mentioned, we're developing a new website, which will be launching in March next year, which will give residents and visitors a clear picture of everything the area has to offer. With more curated itineraries, event listings and stories that inspire people to stay longer, explore and spend locally. We are keen that this site continues to be a valuable tool for our local businesses as well. We'll have improved features through our directory listings and business features and campaign tie-ins, ensuring a better offer as a promotional platform for our retail and hospitality businesses and our visitor attractions. Alongside the website, we have the Perth and Kinross regional gift card, which has become an important part of how we support local spending. The gift card can be used in over 200 businesses across Perth and Kinross and our surrounding towns, from independent shops and cafes to visitor attractions and salons. It's a simple, practical way to keep money circulating in our local economy. It also helps small businesses while giving residents and visitors a great way to shop local. Next slide, please. So, to summarise, this is an exciting moment for Perth and Kinross. We have solid foundation with 3 strong narratives and brands. What we don't have yet is the consistent joined-up approach that will let the foundation deliver long-term value. This is our chance to get it right. I feel we have one shot to make a strong first impression when we relaunch. So we must take our time, be clear and be strategic. This doesn't mean moving slowly, it means moving with purpose and pace and with the right governance in place. So it's my ask today that you endorse the refreshed Perth and Kinross Place branding narratives. Thank you, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Well, thank you very much, Kirsty, for your presentation and the slides, which are very helpful. I'm going to open to questions from the floor, and first we have Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you very much for your presentation, which was very good. I think I was present when we launched the previous brand in 2018. I think I sat in the committee that day, and I want to. I've got 1 or 2 questions. My first question is, what's different with this launch of the brand from 2018, which seemed to be very, very ineffective, going from what the report says. It didn't really do what we were meant to do. So what is going to be different about this, rather than how it failed in 2018?
Thank you for your question. I wouldn't necessarily say it failed in 2018. We just maybe didn't have the right resources, whether that be people and the financial backing to actually promote the brand. Serge may want to come in on this, but we were also doing it in partnership with the then Perth City Development Board, and we were hoping it was going to be private sector led. That didn't necessarily happen. We were also in the process of rolling out the brand when COVID hit, so other priorities then became more important, so we probably didn't push the brand out as well as we could have. I also think now we're in a much better position in terms of who we are and what our story is to actually retell that and champion it, and that's why I've been very clear in the report that this is going to take time. We can't rush it. Maybe that's what we did in 2018, so I think it's learning from what we've done in the past and taking our time to make sure people are fully engaged and we roll it out more effectively than we perhaps did in 2018. So lessons have been learned.
And I think Serge wants to come in as well.
Sorry, I think Kirsty covered, because COVID came in when it was gaining momentum in 2018, 2019, but COVID came in and just effectively stopped that momentum. So that's why it was not as effective as we thought it would have been.
I've got another two questions. Do you want them now or will I come back in?
Right, just go for it. Yep.
You mentioned resources, and I actually looked to see what resources we were going to be putting into this, but I couldn't find it in the report. What were you actually talking about? Financial resources? How much are we going to spend on this campaign?
So in terms of financial resources, we're just going to use existing budgets that we have at the moment, depending on how things go, obviously, but that is what we'll be using at the moment, and it'll be delivered by the Business Place and Investment team.
I didn't hear a figure quoted. What sort of money are we talking about spending on this?
We're just at the early stages of launching this and rolling this out, so I couldn't give you a definitive figure on how much all this will cost.
Okay. The other thing, I didn't see in the report any way that we can actually, if we're going to spend, we don't know much as yet. We're going to spend money on this. It doesn't actually give us any clear, measurable outcomes for it, which I was concerned about. That was the last time when it was launched in 2018. There was no clear, measurable outcomes. And my fear is that we're going to repeat the same exercise. Can you reassure me that there will be measurable outcomes that we as councillors can actually refer to and see if it actually works or not?
Yeah, I agree. We will need to have measurable outcomes. This is just really the early stages, and we're looking just really at endorsement at the moment that you're happy with what we're proposing, to actually then go away, work a proposal up and actually take this forward. So it's likely that we will come back to committee in due course once we've fleshed out these proposals. But really what we want to do at the moment is ensure that you're happy with the direction that we're going and the narratives and the brands that we have, that we've got that backing.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, convener. And can I thank Kirsty for the report, which I think is consistent, I think is coherent, and it moves us away from, I think, a perception by many that, we've been overly Perth city centric. We are looking at the towns, the major settlements in particular, Perth and Kinross, and we don't forget also clearly Kinross there. What I do want to ask though is it is consistent, it is coherent, but This does not preclude local initiatives, local developments. The reason I say, I think the example I give is probably Galloway, where you've got Wigton, which is very much seen as Scotland's book town. Castle Douglas is certainly one of two Scotland food towns in Scotland, and we don't. This branding strategy does not. It can coexist with that kind of local development. Yep.
Absolutely. I think really the purpose of having the overarching story and narrative is that we can all celebrate and champion our region, showcase our assets, showcase why it's such a great place to come and live here, come invest here, come work here, have our talent, attract talent here. I think it's showcasing what all the area has to offer. Each area is unique, so it's pulling that all together and telling a compelling story.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you, convener. I was having a look at the branding on, I think it was page 71, and it's the first time I've actually looked at it really closely. And I'll maybe set a challenge to members to have a look at that and see how many features of life in Perth and Kinross are actually incorporated within the branding logo there. It's quite interesting if you look closely at it. And I think, like Councillor Robertson, I do recall back to 2018 when this branding was first brought forward and launched at the time, and it was unfortunate that 15 months later COVID came along and kind of everything changed at that point in time. And there are other things, like we've obviously added the Stone of Destiny to our brand since then, which will help with this. But my question is, I just wondered where we are with the partners that we want to involve in this branding exercise. What consultations or discussions have you had with them, and what was their response, if you like, to coming on board with this? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. We haven't actually got to that stage yet. That is part of the next phase in rolling this out. So once we have the endorsement today that you're happy with the proposals, then we will start doing stakeholder engagement. And the first stop that we're doing is with our Perth and Kinross Economic Partnership. So there's a lot of stakeholders around that group, and also working with like Visit Scotland and other key partners to ensure that we've got full buy-in, so we can actually roll this out effectively.
Thank you, Councillor Massey.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the presentation. I'm interested to know how the brand will reflect the diversity of the towns and rural communities within Perth and Kinross.
So that will be encompassed within the overarching story, but we'll also have focus through Perth City and towns as well. So we already look at the city, and then all our towns and little settlements around that are included. And that'll be much more prominent as we're redoing the brand for Perth City and towns. So as part of the relaunched website next year, we will be featuring a lot more of our towns and their assets, and will be included within that.
Thank you, Councillor Barrett.
Thank you, convener. It's kind of a follow-on from Councillor Duff's question. I noticed in 4.6 and 4.7 about governance and structure. Previously, this was business-led, and it's not clear what the role of the private sector is in the structure. You're talking about engagement with partners, but it isn't clear exactly how they're going to be involved and expected to buy in. There was reference to ambassadors before. I don't know if that's still there. Obviously, there's the Invest in Perth section, which is very much business oriented, but I'm more concerned about the structure and their involvement in the overall picture. And also, I'd suggest that in Invest in Perth, you might want to consider including UHI as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So this again is all part of phase 2 and how we engage with our stakeholders, how we get their buy-in. That's why we're looking to engage with the Perth and Kinross Economic Partnership. Part of that, we have our communication engagement programme, and we'll look to create probably another Perth ambassadors, if not a business champion, to help us drive this forward. So we will very much be working with the private sector. We really do need their buy-in as well, to make this work. But that'll all happen in the next phase.
Thank you, Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, convener. I have two questions for you, Kirsty, but can I first of all say thank you. That was an excellent presentation, delivered well, so thank you for that. In your presentation, you referenced, or you made mention of cities across Scotland and the UK that, and you used the phrase, "I've got it right." I wonder if there's any of them that you'd like to highlight for us to think about.
I think one that naturally springs to mind is People Make Glasgow. You know, everyone has bought into that and got behind it. I have been fortunate through the Scottish Cities Alliance to attend a couple of events where it's all been about place branding. We heard a few from from Cork or actually over, and you know, they very much said that this process does take time. That's why I've put in the timeline it can be up to 2 years, because really we need to get everyone to get behind it. And I understand not everyone will maybe like it necessarily. Brands are always you know, it's one of those things, you either get behind something or you don't. But I think really it's doing this carefully in a process of engagement that allows people to understand what we're trying to achieve and why we want to give Perth and Kinross a unified brand and a narrative, and hopefully get people behind that. But People Make Glasgow is probably the best example of how that's been implemented.
Thanks for that. And bizarrely, I find myself agreeing with Councillor Donaldson. I'm sure him and I will both have to lie in separate darkened rooms to deal with that. But the one thing, you know, in his point about we're now going further out from Perth city centre and taking in more of the area, and I'm sorry to be parochial, but I don't see much in the Carsick area, so I'll extend an invitation to you. If you ever want to spend an hour, I can show you lovely parts of the Cars, which you might be able to include in any future plans.
I think I did mention in the slide, Errol, Live Life Well. I did actually put that in there. But no, I am aware that we need to include the whole of Perth and Kinross, and it will. And these were just mock-ups that I'd created as part of the presentation and brand pack. They weren't, you know, definitive. They were just for example purposes only.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Convener. And thank you, Kirsty, for that report. Very, very good. Presentation was nice. As you know, in all sorts of different ways of life, branding is so important. If you can get out there, you get well known. I was speaking to someone the other day in the tourist thing about, if you talk about a Bridie, you think about Forfar, you think about Arbroath, you think about a Smoky. We haven't got anything here, right? Which is a shame, but we maybe put that out to people, right? But we have, and we are, according to the statistics, I think, Aberfeldy is the centre of Scotland. Now, if our branding was something like, we are the centre, and we had, for instance, Scotland and Perth and Kinross in that, we could say we are the centre for business, for tourism, for food. It might be a branding that might be worth taking on. So it's only a suggestion, but it's definitely something we could maybe work on, or you can work on anyway. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Not entirely sure there was a question in there, but
I was just suggesting Scotland would be better.
Okay, if there are no further questions, I'm going to move the report. Perth and Kinross Place branding is about creating a strong shared identity for our area, one that reflects who we are and what we stand for. The Perth and Kinross story was originally developed back in 2018 in collaboration with the then Perth City Development Board and place branding agency Thinking Place. This piece of work developed a branding narrative and visual identity for the region that promoted Perth and Kinross as a place to live life well. It was well received, but challenges like COVID and limited resources meant it didn't reach its full potential. Now we have an opportunity to refresh and relaunch that work. The updated brand framework will incorporate the Live Life Well message through all council communication channels and with a clear brand governance and structure, which can also be implemented by our partner organisations. This isn't just about logos and slogans, though. It's about telling our story consistently across the council, our partners and the wider community. It is proposed that this work be led by the Business Place and Investment team, given its strategic role in economic development, business engagement and place promotion. The team will act as the brand guardians and work closely with the communications team to coordinate the work across council services. A refreshed and comprehensive brand toolkit will be developed to include key messages, visual guidance and templates that can be used across the different council teams, partners and stakeholders. Why does this matter? A clear and confident identity helps us to attract new investment and jobs, encourage visitors to explore our towns and countryside and build pride in our communities. So I'm happy to support the recommendations of this report to relaunch the refreshed Live Life Well brand framework to help build a consistent identity for Perth and Kinross that enhances the region's visibility and reputation and therefore move the paper for approval. Can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report?
Thank you, Convener. I'm happy to second the report.
Okay, I have, I think, an amendment from Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. It's strange. I actually liked the report, but I didn't like the things that weren't in it. I'm really uncomfortable about putting my name to a sort of blank check. I'm not happy the fact that there's no clear identity how much we're going to spend on this. I'm not happy the fact that there's no clear way of measuring the outcomes of it. I'm not happy the fact that we still haven't got people on board to make sure it happens. And I'm talking about the private sector. I'm actually not quite happy about the scattergun approach to either. There seems to be, we're trying to cover all bases, which makes it very difficult in a branding sense. I've always thought with branding, you identify your strength and you go with that. To try and cover everything is very difficult. There are areas of Perth and Kinross that seriously need help to promote themselves. And I'm not sure what we've got in this report really does that. There are areas in Perth and Kinross who are doing really well, but there's other areas that aren't doing quite so well. So my amendment is that we defer this paper to get responses to the questions I asked with regard to the funding and with regard to coming back with clear measurable outcomes and with regard to knowing who's actually signed up to take this forward. Because as it's from the questioning that I heard going through, it appears we don't have these answers yet. So I'd like an amendment to be deferred until these questions are answered and it comes back with these things in it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do we have a seconder for that amendment? Councillor Anderson.
Yes, I'd like to second the amendment. I say my memory goes back sometime 25 years where I was convener of economic development in Perth and Kinross. We did things very closely involved with the Chamber of Commerce, our development of Perthshire. We had ambassadors and everything else for the area who spoke well of us. Someone down near Errol who's down near me would be an excellent ambassador for the area. But I would support, there's no monies mentioned here. Without anything, a budget proposal for what it's going to cost. One looks at what Pitlochry Hotels have been doing recently on STV, quite a number of businesses, local businesses, using the television as a media cost. There's no costings in there of what proposals might be. I say I'd like it deferred and come forward with how we newspaper, where we're going, how we're going to promote the element, what we're going to use for that. So I would like to second Willie with the proposals deferred, please.
Understood. Okay. I mean, I can understand some of the concerns there. I'm not sure I agree with all of what Councillor Robertson has said. I think the issue on spend is obviously a budget item, and therefore, you know, by delaying any consideration of that item until part of a budget cycle is simply going to delay progress with this. So I think I'm just going to go ahead with a vote and see how this goes. But I mean, you make legitimate points, Councillor Robertson, and your point of clarification from Councillor Duff.
Sorry, thank you. I just wondered if Councillor Robertson wanted to put a timescale on the deferral for this, please.
Well, we'll defer the first paper till January. I don't know. I would expect the things I've actually asked for should be fairly easily found and put in a report and just added to this. So I would expect it perhaps to come back in January.
Serge, do you want to come in?
Yes, I think in terms of how we can measure the outcomes of the campaign, of the branding, and in terms of the funding element, you know, of that we can maybe do that by January. Having the partners signing up, you know, to the branding narrative over that period will be quite challenging because we need to start somewhere. So if the council doesn't endorse the branding today, it's quite difficult for us to go to the partners and say the council has effectively. So it's a kind of chicken and egg there situation. So that's why we came today to effectively help to move, you know, that process, and obviously keeping the committee involved all the way through when we are able to engage partners.
Thanks for that, Serge. My argument would be that it'd be easier to get people to sign up to something if they saw there was firm, measurable outcomes from it, and also if they knew there was a guaranteed budget to deliver it, which makes I would suggest makes your job easier. Businesses are under a lot of pressure nowadays, and with time constraints, and I think it'd be better if that information was available to them when you're doing your negotiations. Thank you.
Before I've been asked for a short recess, but before doing so, Councillor Barrett, you have a point of clarification.
Yeah, I just wanted to check. I think the next stage is about getting partners involved, but involved in the process rather than signing up to do particular things. Is that right, Kirsty? Serge?
It is mainly, yes, going through the stakeholders engagement, which will obviously make sure that they are engaged in the process, but also that they are obviously starting to back up the message as well, the brand. So it's both, you know.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to take a short recess here. Point of clarification, Councillor Forbes.
Just in regard to the budget, convener, you said something which has made me ask for this question. Is there a budget already there that we might take some of and you just don't know how much that is? Or is it fully dependent upon what council decides at the budget setting process in I think it'll be in March?
To answer that question, we've got a budget we've invested Perth, which is the police promotion budget. So that will be the first protocol for starting the process and you know, including some of the expenditure or you know on that. At the moment, there's no additional request, you know, to the council in terms of budget.
Sorry, can I just add as well that given the fact that we're refreshing this, we already have the existing tools that we have. It's just a case of updating them. So in terms of a monetary value, we've got a contract already in place, which is local, that we're using to, do a refresh toolkit and brand guidelines. So it isn't we're not starting from scratch. We already have that base there, that mechanism. So even when we're engaging with people, we already have those tools. It's just a case of refreshing the story, the narrative. We have the book. I can understand your point in terms of relaunching, but in terms of our budget, we've got capacity under Invest in Perth, as Sarah just mentioned.
Thank you for that clarification, Councillor Ford.
Okay, I kind of have some sympathy, I have to say, with Councillor Robertson's views. I don't necessarily agree with them entirely, but I have some sympathy with what he's saying. Is it possible that we can get from either of you a maximum spend and a reassurance that there won't be a requirement for us to allocate more money to this at the next budget process?
I can give you the assurance that we will use the budget we have, which is operational budget for place promotion. So there's no additional request, to the council. And if there was any additional request, you will have to go through the normal budget process, in terms of additional. But as it stands, over the next, first stage of that process, I think we can contain that within the existing budget that we have.
So, Serge, the one thing we don't have is a number. And I think that's what we're all looking at. Now, if that's tied to a contractor that we can't discuss in public, please say so. But I think I would agree with Councillor Robertson. We would like to have a number.
It's difficult for me to give you a specific number, for the activities. We have contracts and so marketing, so I cannot really go down into that detail. If your question is asking what will be the overall budget that will be allocated to that brand activities, the maximum budget that we have and that's in Perth is the budget allocation, which is £100,000. There's no way we go to that level. And I think we're talking much more in the first instance, around £30,000.
Okay, so are you still looking for a recess, Councillor Forbes?
If you could just give us 5 minutes, I think within our group, we would like to just have a quick chat, if that's okay.
Okay, that's perfect. Okay, the meeting is in recess. It's now 15:04. We'll reconvene at, let's make it 3:10. The meeting is now reconvened, and can I ask Councillor Robertson to make some further comments?
Thank you, Convener. Based on the assurances you've given me that we'll get a further follow-up to this, giving us clear, measurable outcomes for it, which is important. I think as councillors, we shouldn't be allocating resources to something that's unmeasurable and we don't know how effective what we're doing is. I would also, if I may, ask you to, I think marketing is very important, but it has to be targeted. I've just felt this paper was just too much of a broad brush over everything. So a more targeted approach I'd be happier with. But based on what you've said and the fact that Serge Marone has given us a figure that we're expecting to be spent on this, I'd be happy to draw my men based on these things. And if Councillor Anderson is also happy to.
Yeah. So Councillor Anderson, are you similarly minded? Okay, thank you. I think we reach a satisfactory conclusion there, and thank you for your consideration of these matters, and I can give the assurances that you're seeking. Thank you. So on that basis, can we agree the report? No. Comments. Yes, indeed. Comments first, and Councillor Forbes.
Thanks, Convener. I work in this field, so I do know a little bit about it, and I get where my colleague is coming from when it comes to the wooliness of the nature, and I kind of wish he'd discussed this with us in advance. We could have found a compromise agreement, but I was very impressed with the presentation that we had from Kirsty and the answers from Serge. I'm happy with your proposal that we proceed with a dated time to come back with some further information and a progress update. So I think we've reached a reasonable compromise, which is what we should strive to do, I think, in this chamber at all times.
Thank you for that, Councillor Massey.
Thank you, convener, and thank you for the presentation. I support this refreshed Perth and Kinross Place branding proposal. This new branding will give a clear and confident identity for all of Perth and Kinross area. If we can promote and align this new identity with our towns, villages and local businesses, then I'd hope that in a few years' time our identity branding will be recognised around the world. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, convener. Earlier, I was going to suggest we just went straight to a vote. I definitely think had the original amendment been carried, it would have put us back. I think Kirsty Easton's presentation was consistent, was coherent. I thought it was clear. And I think it sets out the principles of what we're looking to do, and it's taking us away from as I've said earlier, a Perth City-centric, or what is perceived as Perth City-centric, to cover the whole of Perth and Kinross. I think at this moment to give a detailed breakdown on what the marketing spend should be, and really to go into incredible detail there, I'll tell you one thing I think is going to be important. And that is actually with the next paper on the agenda, the visitor levy scheme, because certainly with that and what you can spend on promotion and marketing, that's one of the specific areas in that paper that's mentioned, area promotion and destination marketing. I think also it's important we've got a clear assurance that even though we're looking for an overarching message, brand for Perth and Kinross, it does not exclude or preclude local initiatives that are kind of I mentioned in other bits of Scotland, and they can kind of coexist. So I certainly approve the paper, but we will go back to it and it will evolve like any marketing strategies. It will evolve, it will develop over time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can we agree the paper as amended? Thank you. Okay, moving on to the final item on this afternoon's agenda. Visitor levy scheme, early engagement and future timescales. And just give two colleagues a moment to get seated. And can I ask Suzanne Comiskey, Economic Development Officer, to introduce the report? Suzanne.
Thanks, convener. It's actually myself that's introducing the report. Steve MacDonald, Economic Development Manager, Business Place and Investment, but Suzanne is on hand to answer any of the questions as well. So good afternoon, members. In February 2025, this committee agreed to explore the potential of a visitor levy for Perth and Kinross, including a comprehensive early engagement exercise with businesses, communities and relevant partners. The early engagement phase was launched in March 2025, and a copy of the engagement plan is included as an appendix in your report. This has involved online consultation, supported by a series of in-person engagement sessions, meetings with key industry representatives, and one-to-one meetings with accommodation providers and attractions. Several key themes have emerged throughout the engagement, which very much chime with other areas of Scotland. Again, they are highlighted within your paper. As part of the exercise, we have commissioned the Muffet Centre, an established industry specialist in this field, to draft a potential scheme, including an economic impact assessment based on the engagement and legislation. This will include a full representation and assessment of the engagement, and the drafts will be complete by the end of this month. The communication from the Scottish Government and through our engagement with neighbouring authorities and national networks has indicated that there's a strong possibility that there may be changes to national legislation. This is in part due to the response and feedback from local authorities across the country, including ourselves. Also, a national portal to provide collection of a levy is being developed by the Improvement Service and is due to be launched in April 2026. This is important as challenges around collection was definitely one of the key issues that came and was raised throughout the engagement process. So in light of these 2 points, we are recommending that we wait for any changes before bringing a report back to Council. This would likely be early summer 26 or when there is further clarity on national legislation. Suzanne and I are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve, for that report. And I'm going to ask for questions and starting off, Councillor Carr.
Thank you. I've just got a quick question. Can you confirm that under the present legislation, I know you'd mentioned there about further legislation coming into place, but would it be possible for any visitor levy to include a provision for an agreed percentage of the levy to be applied to required infrastructure and public services, and also whether that could also include a percentage distribution to specific tourist areas such as Highland or neighbouring wards?
Yeah, so that would be the case. So there is scope within the legislation. It could be for specific geographical areas, it could be for specific activities, but that would be for us as a local authority to kind of draft up that scheme and introduce them. We're very much using the engagement sessions as a way of informing that, and that will form part of the paper that comes that follows this, where we can present that kind of draft scheme.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Convener, and thanks, Suzanne and Steve, for your presentation. What I want to ask is, there's likely to be changes, legislative proposals brought forward in Scottish Parliament in January. You refer clearly, and I think they move from an ad valorem rate to the possibility of a fixed rate, or in particular a tiered rate. What other changes, though, are you anticipating may come about? I know it's speculation. That I think the one clear one is on VAT and the position on VAT and how that impacts on providers. But anything else that you believe might come about?
Thank you for the question. I'm not anticipating at this stage further changes in the immediate future. I think the VAT threshold question still with HMRC. We are waiting a response on that. The main changes are, as you've rightly said, on the legislative changes, which would allow for additional flexibilities to local authorities for fixed rates or fixed tier rates. Other than that, there isn't anything else outstanding that we're aware of. The collection system was one that we're waiting on details of. That's going to be going live in April 2026. So that's in development at the moment with the Improvement Service.
Sorry, I went off. Suzanne's right with the legislation. I think it came through loud and clear that the collection of a potential levy was a major concern, particularly for industry. But I think we've also fed that back as a local authority, that a kind of national scheme, and that's been heard and it's been developed by the Improvement Service. That would make our lives a lot easier as well. So just to reduce that administrative burden for both businesses and the local authority.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Thank you, Convener, and thank you, Suzanne, your colleagues, for this report. I hope having advanced sight of at least some of my questions for today was helpful. Can I begin by asking about the response to the consultation process? So I accept that you said it would be ready at the end of this month, but clearly some kind of even basic analysis must have been done on that, because at 4.8 you describe participants described a tourism sector under strain from multiple regulatory costs. Further down the page in 4.18 you're highlighting challenges that were highlighted by residents, communities and businesses. So clearly some summary of that consultation has been done by your colleagues. The one thing that I'm not seeing is that very simple question which I asked to be put in, and I'm grateful that it was put in, which was, do we actually want to do this or do we not? So can you tell us how many people think we should do it and how many people think we shouldn't?
And I think, Serge, you want to come in?
Yeah, I'm not answering directly your question there, but just as a preamble, in terms of the analysis of the engagement activities, and I would have liked to have provided more information today to the committee on the engagement activities, and Steve and Susan maybe provide you some element of answer, to your specific question today. But the reason why we were not able really to provide a full picture to the committee today was we needed more time to analyze the qualitative element of the engagement, activities, and that will be available a bit later, than today. But obviously, Stephen and Susan can answer some more, specific question.
Okay, I'm just picking up that direct question that they answered in terms of kind of those in favour and those against it. I mean, and this is very much based on the legislation that we have at the moment. So I think at a headline, and this is from the online survey, it was 29% were for the levy, 68% were against, and the rest were don't knows. But I would say, and just to kind of back up Serge's point as well, that a lot of those, it was based on the existing legislation. So, things around the VAT threshold, that came across loud and clear very much from our small accommodation providers, self-caterers and bed and breakfast. So, they were looking for that to be addressed. And also, I mentioned that the collection scheme, that was a big barrier potentially for some of our smaller accommodation providers. So that was the kind of headline, but I think we have to obviously look at some of that kind of qualitative information as well, as part of the research. So that, as Serge says, that will be forthcoming. It's not as it's quite very nuanced, this, and I know you guys know that as members, but it's quite tricky to interpret some of this information and how we kind of weight that, etc. So we are going through that exercise at the moment. That will be ready soon, and we're happy to share that with EE&I members when that's complete.
Follow up.
Yep, thanks for that. And I have to say, I'm not surprised by the numbers you've just given me. It's roughly where I thought it would be, but I have to say it worries me, and this isn't a comment, I'll make it a direct question. It seems such a simple question to ask, and it seems such a very basic answer for us to get. Can I ask why it wasn't included in this report?
Yes, as I said, in terms of the engagement process, we wanted the engagement to be credible in terms of the effectiveness, the inclusiveness of that engagement. So we need to go through specific standards in terms of how we engage with people. So making sure that we can record what they've said, analyze what they say, and also reflect and put that back into the decision process. So one figure doesn't necessarily reflect the engagement process as we have carried out, because there's a lot of other information in terms of the engagement and the qualitative element. And as Steve said, in some element of that engagement, it's not that people were against or for the scheme. It was mainly they were against because it was a flat rate, a percentage more than the flat rate. So there's much more. And I think if we want to be credible in how we report that engagement, it has to be the full picture. And that's why we've not put that specific figure in the report, not to isolate that figure, bearing in mind that was necessarily from the online consultation as well. And there's quite a lot has happened as well with the in-person engagement sessions.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, convener. I am going to continue further along the line that Councillor Forbes has raised. Within the online survey, there was a specific question, question 16, which said, do you support the idea of a visitor levy in Perth and Kinross? And I think the answers were a straight yes or no. And I wonder if you are able to specifically answer the outcome of that question. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Councillor Duff. So that was the percentage that I provided. I think 29% were in favour and 68% against, with the rest don't know. But again, I would say that was based on the kind of scheme and legislation as presented.
Okay, are there no further questions? Councillor Forbes.
I can just start with a very brief preamble. Sorry about this, but the council did some social media posts relating to the consultation to encourage people to sign up. Disconnected to each other, but both at the same time, both Councillor Duff and I raised concerns with the communications team about the wording of those posts. We felt they were emphasising the potential benefits of the scheme, but not talking in any way about the potential downside to the scheme. Now, the council immediately stopped that social media posting and changed the wording. In my view, that therefore accepts the fact that my and Councillor Duff's point was right. Do the officers have the officers given any thought to what impact that would have had on the answers that were given to the online consultation?
I don't think I can answer that with any degree of certainty. I think in all our communications, we've tried to present, what the opportunities and what the challenges are, both going out on social media and through our in-person sessions as well. But we've been very kind of open with that. So I don't think I could give a kind of an accurate answer on terms of how that may have influenced that or otherwise.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Duff.
Thank you. I have a couple of questions, but I'll ask this one. In relation to paragraph 4.8 then, given what we've just talked about, it says here, while the principle of supporting tourism infrastructure through a levy was acknowledged, the overwhelming tone of feedback from Perth and Kinross businesses was cautious and in many cases opposed to local implementation at this stage. I think given it was, 70%, 30% against it, I wonder if that doesn't accurately reflect the views of those who responded, and whether it should be, in many cases, should it not indeed be in a majority or a vast majority or something of that nature, were opposed to local implementation of a visitor levy.
I'm not sure I understand the question, Councillor Duff. Many cases sounds like the majority to me, but
well, I'm glad that the convener acknowledges that it's the majority of cases. It just the wording there just didn't strike me as being reflective, if you like, of the 70-30 split in relation to the feedback that has been received in relation to this. However, I shall move on if that's okay. I have a question I will ask then and leave it at that. At paragraph 3. Sorry, just give me a second. 17, I think it is. I moved my paper there. Yes, 3.17. It talks about an economic impact assessment, and I wonder if you could have an update on progress with the economic impact assessment. Thank you.
Thank you for the question. So, as we said at the outset, we have appointed the Moffat Centre to look at starting work on an options appraisal. This was with the timeline in mind that we were coming back to committee in December. So they are developing that at the moment using PRINCE2 methodology, and as part of that they'll be looking at a full sort of risk assessment, if you like, of implementing a levy or not. So that's the reference there. So any economic impact, we'd probably look at sort of social element as well, economic, the environmental impacts. So it would be a thorough exercise.
Follow up, please, Camilla. Thank you. And given that the economic impact assessment was requested in February when we agreed the process, I'm surprised to find that in effect that economic impact assessment isn't already underway or indeed near conclusion. Is there a timescale for its completion, please?
Thank you. Yeah, so that'll be included within the draft that we have by the end of this month. So, you know, we're an economic development function, so we recognise the importance of having an economic impact assessment as part of this piece of work. So please be assured that you will have that as part of the kind of full assessment from the Muffet Centre. It's taken a while to do that because I think it's based on a lot of the feedback we've had from businesses in particular. So, you know, it will balance up, you know, the potential cost of the scheme, but it will also recognise the potential investment as well. So, as I said previously, it is quite nuanced, a lot of this stuff. So, but please be assured that is right at the heart of what we're doing. So, you know, alongside any revenue, for example, the impact economically will be considered as part of this piece of work.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cuthbert.
Thank you, Convener. I'm just curious and wanting to double check in terms of who could fill in the online survey. Can you tell me who was able to do it? Was there any sort of verification of their identities or anything like that? Was it open to anybody or was it specific?
Thank you for the question. So the consultation went live on the 2nd of June. It was open until the end of September. It was open to anybody really, residents, communities, businesses or visitors. It is anonymised, so we don't know who has completed the visitor survey. But we, you know, it was open to everybody and very widely publicised.
And just to add to that, I think, you know, a visitor levy would impact on everyone. So hence the reason it was open to everyone. But it was, as Suzanne says, it's categorised into, you know, residents, visitors, businesses, and we've kind of kept a close eye on that throughout the process to see where we need to kind of push further engagement. So visitors, for example, was an area where, you know, it was quite light in terms of engagement, so we made a push on that. So we've tried to be as representative as we possibly can be, as you can in any early engagement consultation exercise.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Forbes.
Only a few more, Convener. In relation to the time and cost that has gone into the process so far, are you able to give us any indication of how much money or how much officer time has been spent producing what we've got or what we'll get at the end of this month? And is it the intention, once the Scottish Government make up their mind what they're doing, and I believe that could be beyond the next Parliament, would we be going back out to redo the consultation exercise again? And if so, I'm sorry, there's three questions here. Do you think the Scottish Government would pay for that?
Okay, I'll take each of those in turn. The first one on the cost, in terms of direct cost, it's cost us £28,000 to date, and that's to support the engagement, the forecasting work, analysis of the engagement, and the drafting of a potential scheme. So that's to take us right up until that drafting of the scheme. We did secure funding through UK Shared Prosperity Fund to support this. Other areas have taken on a post or posts to do this work, but we felt that commissioning this work externally would provide a kind of fair and independent analysis, and it was cheaper as well to do that than taking someone on. The second part of your question here was around the consultation. So it's quite complex in terms of what the legislation and what the guidance sets out in terms of how we go about this. So what we've carried out as instructed by this committee was the early engagement exercise, which is to help inform a potential scheme. So we've got lots and lots of information there, both, you know, pros, cons, challenges, opportunities that will enable us and help us to draft a potential scheme. by the legislation, we'd then have to go out to a formal consultation on that scheme. So that would be the intention, that we'd draft a scheme up that we're able to show to people, this is how a visitor levy would look, this is how it would work, this is where the money would be invested. It would provide a lot more detail. So we would go out to a kind of more formal consultation on how that scheme would look. If you kind of flip back to February, we kind of deliberately thought we'd take our time on this, because it's, as I say, it's complex, it's nuanced. So I think that early engagement process was welcomed by a lot of people when we went out, and that was definitely fed back. But at the same time, people were wanting to see how a scheme would work and maybe answer some of those more specific questions. So we would take it on to that more formal consultation exercise, again, with communities, with businesses, with partners, etc. And on the last one, I don't know the answer to that one, if the Scottish Government would pay for it or not.
Two quick follow-ups on that, if I may, convener. Perhaps if that's, I accept the officers can't answer that question, and with hindsight, it was unfair of me to put that on the table for them. So my apologies for that. But if we are in a position where we're having to redo the consultation again because of changes within the Scottish Government or changes in mind, and let's not kind of beat about the bush here, convener. The initial letter that was sent out by Ivan McKee said that we would be able to levy this as a flat fee rather than a percentage. And 3 days after he sent that letter, he sent another letter saying, actually, no, we're only going to think about giving you that permission. So this hasn't been a good outcome by the Scottish Government. So I think if we have to do extra work on the basis of that, then I think it would be fair to ask them for the money. But I think I'm wasting my time in that particular area. But I think to go back to what you just said, is my concern here is that through the course of the discussion we've had today, is I think both yourself and Serge have kind of suggested that a lot of, or some of the responses are hinging on what happens next in terms of the Scottish Government. That may not be until the next Parliament. I'm kind of reliably told there's no space in the Parliament diary to deal with that this year, or within this Parliament. What happens then? Do we just sit on this until we get I mean, if it is so clear that people will make a decision based on the outcome of what the Scottish Government decide to do we just have to sit back until they do that?
I think I would probably take it back to the process that we agreed initially, and this would become a bit complicated, because what we went through, and so I don't mean to sound pedantic in terms of wording, but what went through is the early engagement, which is to help us inform a scheme, and that's been really informative for us, and we've had lots of good information back from businesses, communities, and partners, etc. So that's the early engagement process. So we're not really having to go out and do the work again. What we have to do is then kind of formally consult on what has come up. So and that will respond to a lot of the stuff that's come up locally, and we've kind of talked about that, and it's referenced in the report. It does chime, as I said, with a lot of the stuff that's come up nationally. So I think everyone's in a very similar position. So kind of listening to that feedback, and that will then help to inform our scheme. So it's that difference, I think, between early engagement, drafting a potential scheme for Perth and Kinross, then moving into that formal consultation where we can say we're kind of not finished this process. This is what we set out, but we've kind of listened to your feedback again, both barriers, opportunities, all of that stuff, and here's what we've kind of we've drafted on the back of that. Then it's that kind of formal consultation to get a bit of feedback, guidance, and ultimately a decision on that.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart.
Thanks very much. I think I've got two questions, convener. First one, completely different subject. The first one, in terms of the potential changes to the legislation, I think I saw in the report, but I'm flicking through and I can't find it now to ask about, but those might come in January or early next year. Is that right? Why then would we be proposing a delay until the summer? Yeah.
Serge, you want to come in? Yeah. Microphone.
Nobody's microphones. Oh, it's mine.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Stewart. Yes, the reason why we put the timeline to the summer 26 was for different reasons. The first was to complete meaningfully the engagement process with the qualitative information and reflect, fairly what people have said. Secondly, was to effectively know what about the changes, what changes would come through the legislation, change and process, and if the changes in that process will link to what people have told us. So we need more time on that. The other element, which was quite important and that's reflected in the engagement, was the collection arrangements, and that will only come into play in April, May of next year. So we wanted to have a bit more time to see how it was panning out in terms of implementation and practicalities, because that was quite a key element in what people have told us. So it made sense to have all of these components in place before coming back to the council with a draft scheme for the council to consider.
Okay, thanks. I mean, I think on the point about the collection scheme, you're only going to get useful feedback once Edinburgh start using it later on next year. You won't get useful information from just when it's switched on. I wouldn't have thought, but anyway. Okay, so my other question is about the engagement. So you mentioned there, I think, Mr. Maroon, that you wanted time to qualitatively analyse the engagement or complete the engagement, but as far as I understand it from looking at the plan in Appendix 1, we've done that. We've engaged people to analyse the data. That report's going to be ready by the end of the month and was going to come to council next month. So we've heard that there were 20 from the online survey. There was 69% against and 28% in favour. Can I ask the same question for the visitor survey, the online session for caravan park providers, the roundtable discussion with agri-tourism providers, and the one-to-one discussions with large accommodation providers? What was their, in each of those 4 cases, what was their answer to that question?
Thank you. I don't know the specific answer, and that's what we need a bit of time to work through. Those kind of specifics for key industry bodies, etc. We don't have that information to hand at the moment, but that will be ready by the end of the month in due course. Okay, and then lastly, what about the so officers were, I think it said officers went and held the public community events in the Civic Hall, Burnham Arts, Blairgowrie Town Hall, here in Kinross, Lochleven Community Campus. So what was the feedback from the public or people who were coming in and engaging with those in-person events to that question, the yes, no question? Those conversations didn't always go down a straight yes, no. It provided lots of information. There was a broad representation of people there. There was lots of businesses. There was lots of residents as well, and visitors also popped in. But and each discussion was very different. It wasn't always a kind of one-to-one drop-in session. On a few occasions, it turned into a bit of a group discussion. So, but Suzanne and I have kind of recorded all that information, and that's what we have to kind of distill down and analyse. But these people weren't explicitly asked, do you believe in a visitor levy or not at the engagement sessions. We did always ask them to go away and fill in the online survey, because that's the best way of doing that, and we provided a QR code link, etc. So we did ask them if they could go away and do that, but not everyone was comfortable answering those questions publicly at the time. So we did ask them to go away and do that, but there was lots of information that came from those engagement sessions and lots of robust conversation.
Okay, thank Serge.
Can I just add on that? That's the qualitative element. And I think in terms of engagement, we have to be very careful that there's a quantitative element, which is important, but there's also a qualitative element, particularly when we try to reach out to people who are not necessarily engaging through the quantitative element, and that's why the inclusiveness is important. That's the reason why we run a specific session for caravan sites, because they were a bit lost in all of this, and they are addressing an area of the market which may obviously be more about people who have less money to go on holiday, and so we wanted to capture that as well. So it is. I know it's the quantitative element is quite attractive because they give you a figure, but I think it's important in the engagement that we're also capturing the qualitative element, and we're making sure that the people we have tried to reach out, not necessarily, the first to come into this type of engagement are heard as well.
Okay, thank you. I'm picking up loud and clear on the qualitative element of the responses that needs to be assessed. But if there are no, there is a further question, Councillor Stewart. Sorry, Angus, Councillor Forbes.
Yeah, thanks, convener. I think probably my last question, I'm sure you'll be pleased to know, is about what the money can be used for. And I think I've been consistent. I don't think anyone will disagree about my worry about the language that we use on this. And in 3.9, we're still saying to understand the scale of potential revenues raised from any levy scheme. And it kind of worries me. I think my definite question is, can I get some clear responses to what we can spend this money on? Because I think that's kind of woolly, and I think a lot of my colleagues across the chamber will, understandably, given the council's finances, be looking at this as some kind of cash cow. And I don't think we can go to tourism businesses and say, agree to this and we're going to raise money and all go to tourism and that'll help you, whilst at the same time thinking, hey, hallelujah, guys, there's a pile of money coming our way. This is going to help our budget problems next year. And I watched just before we came down, convener, your little YouTube clip that was on the council's website. And I don't think even you accepted the fact that this will all go to tourism. I think there's a woolly bit in the middle that we might see this as a way of solving a financial problem for the council. And as I said a minute ago, I don't think it's fair to go to tourist businesses and say to them, this will help you, when in fact, at least some members across the chamber may be seen this as a solution to our finances. So my direct question, I'm sorry, after that elaborate build up, is there a definite line in the sand as to what we can use this money for?
Thank you for the question. So I think at the outset of this process, we outlined that what we needed was a clear strategy, and we came to the committee with a tourism strategy and action plan that's up until 2030. And within that, we outlined the strategic framework, which had the pillars of destination marketing, investment in infrastructure, market development, and also industry growth. So those are the pillars that we've set out to industry. And I think at this stage, in the absence of an actual scheme, draft proposed visitor levy scheme, we don't have the specifics of percentage allocation of where that would be allocated as yet, but that's something I think that we are to work on further. Steve might want to come in on this.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I suppose to go right back to the legislation. So the money has to be, I think, correct me if I'm wrong here, anything that enhances the kind of tourist or visitor experience. So the money has to kind of link in with that as part of the kind of national legislation. But yeah, Suzanne talked about the tourism strategy and action plan. So under each of those, the different headings that Suzanne mentioned, there is a series of actions, some of which we can fund through our existing budgets, which is great, but some are more aspirational, which we'd like to get investment for, maybe the levy, maybe other schemes as well. So we do have a kind of suite of actions there, and that was presented as part of the online consultation, but it was also presented through the kind of engagement sessions as well. And I think, again, going back to we're doing this kind of analysis, but what were the key things, particularly I think, from businesses, what are they looking for? I think kind of off the top of my head and anecdotally, there was a recognition that investment in infrastructure would be important and could potentially benefit their business, and also kind of, wider destination marketing as well, in terms of how we tie similar tourism products and attractions together. kind of anecdotally, those are two things that came back quite strongly. So I think we'd use that information to help inform how a scheme would look like. So we could present saying, this is the potential revenue that we could raise, this is the economic impact of it, and these are the type of activities that could be supported.
Serge?
Just to add on that, I believe as well as part of the legislation, we have a responsibility to set up a panel, an industry panel, to make sure that the money is monitored, and consulted on with the industry.
Can I just make a quick follow-up myself? With Red, I'm glad that you've increased the hit rate on my YouTube video. That's very good. Double counting. Yeah, so I mean the point I was endeavouring to make, and I hope I did make, is clearly the intention about any funds raised through the levy is to benefit the tourist industry and to develop tourism across Perth and Kinross. And you also made an entirely valid point that I've been completely upfront about the challenges facing local authority finances at the moment. Now, clearly, if we are improving, for example, public transport or infrastructure in a tourist area such as Highlands, such as Strathearn, then that is not exclusively for the benefit of tourists. It's obviously going to benefit local residents too, and that's the point. But the primary purpose and the focus of any investment will be as determined, or would be as determined in due course, based on a framework of priorities, including things like tourism promotion, but also including infrastructure, including public transport and other things besides, for the primary benefit of the tourism industry, but obviously by association, local residents as well would benefit if they lived in that kind of area. Okay, kind of lost track here. So, Councillor Stewart.
Thank you. Last question from me as well. 4.8 talks about some of the general feedback from all of the engagement sessions and meetings. One sentence stood out to me there, which was participants described a tourism sector under strain from multiple regulatory cost and staffing pressures. Regardless of the engagement and sort of qualitative analysis that happens between now and next summer, there's no way to get past that point, is there? That's always going to be the case. And so a tax, introducing a tourist tax, is going to add to the regulatory strain and the cost and staffing pressures, isn't it?
I mean, you're right. I mean, the current economic circumstances are unlikely to change in the near future, so these challenges will remain. Although, because of obviously the financial constraint the council will have, there's a need obviously for the tourism industry to be more flexible and agile to address these challenges, and having additional resources coming potentially from a levy can help. I'm thinking about the staffing pressure. It's about recruiting, making sure that they have the right skills and the right experience of people. So you can imagine potentially that additional funding could help to develop more collective initiative for the businesses. So there's maybe other ways to address this challenging collectively that it will be for individual businesses.
Okay, thank you. I'm not seeing any further questions, so I'm going to move the report at this stage. Firstly, I want to express my sincere thanks to everyone who has taken the time to share their views during the early engagement phase, residents, businesses and visitors alike. Your feedback has been invaluable and has helped us understand the breadth of opinion on this issue. It's clear from what we've heard that there are strong feelings on all sides. Some see the visitor levy as a way to invest in our area and strengthen our visitor economy, while others have raised concerns about timing, fairness, and the impact on businesses already under pressure. These are important points, and I want to assure you that they have been heard. However, we cannot ignore the wider context. Public finances are under significant strain, particularly in areas like social care, as we heard in this chamber very recently, where demand is growing. At the same time, we need to maintain and improve the infrastructure and marketing that attract visitors to Perth and Kinross. If we want to keep our region competitive and vibrant, we have to look seriously at alternative sources of funding. The visitor levy is one such option. It's why other councils have moved ahead. Edinburgh, Glasgow and Aberdeen have all set dates for implementation. But the Scottish Government has signalled that they are looking to make changes which could give councils more flexibility on how a levy is applied and administered, and which may well address some of the concerns reflected in the early engagement. Those councils who are moving ahead also offer the opportunity to see what the levy looks like in practice, and in particular how the visitor levy national platform, which is being introduced, will work for businesses. That's why I'm backing the recommendations in the report to bring a report back to Council next year when more information is known. I believe that this is a measured and pragmatic approach that respects the views we've heard, recognises the challenges ahead, and ensures that when the time comes, we do collectively make the right decision for Perth and Kinross based on the fullest picture possible. And therefore, happy to accept the recommendations in the report and move the paper for approval. And can I ask Councillor Welsh to second the report, please?
Thank you.
Sorry, can I just hold for a moment? I'm hearing there's an issue with Councillor Kugali's connection. Hopefully we should be okay now, Noah. Just bear with me.
Can you hear that now, Noah?
I can.
Thank you. Without repeating what I've just said, in essence, I think the point I'm making is that there have been a number of projects carried out by this council before my time as a councillor that have been invested as both local and tourism initiatives as capital projects, but unfortunately, we do not seem to find the money and the resource to support them as revenue maintenance type projects. And I think there is no doubt that that some of this money could be used to enhance those projects, which will ultimately also benefit local people too. Councillor Stewart pointed out that some of the businesses, and it was mentioned in the report, cite regulatory pressures, cost pressures and staffing pressures. Unfortunately, a number of those are out with the control of both this council and indeed the Scottish Government. National insurance played a significant role in impacting local tourism businesses. The rejection of zonal energy pricing, which could have made a huge difference to the costs of running tourism business in a positive and beneficial way, and staffing pressures where potentially the opportunities to develop a visa programme specifically for the needs of the people of Scotland and the industries of Scotland were rejected again by UK Government. However, I think enough has been said in terms of reassurance that we are very much listening to our tourism sector operators, and having attended the drop-in session at Lochleven Community Campus and also having attended a number of the Perth Tourism Partnership meetings with Suzanne Comiskey, we do actively work closely with those businesses in a meaningful way, and I'm confident that they will be in due course reassured and assured by whatever comes forward in subsequent papers. Thank you. And finally, I'm happy to second the report.
Okay, thank you. And we have an amendment. Councillor Forbes.
The amendment's been submitted. I believe Councillor Duff will second it, and once it's on the screen, I'll be happy to talk. Thanks, convener. I'm very conscious we've given this a really good look at today, so I'll be brief, and I'm only going to quote a couple of people. The famous line in 4.8, where it says, in many cases, businesses opposed local implementation at this stage. Participants described a tourism sector under strain from multiple regulatory cost and staffing pressures. Who would want to be in the tourist industry at the moment? Convener, you quite rightly identified a couple of councils which are going ahead with it, Edinburgh being one of them, but what you didn't quote was the councils which have taken the very brave decision to support their tourism industry and not go ahead with this. Shetland Islands, Western Islands, South Ayrshire Council, Argyll and Bute, East Ayrshire Council are the ones that I can find immediately to hand on Google. One of them citing rural challenges, that was East Ayrshire Council, a council area similar in size and shape to ourselves. And I'm going to finish off with one last quote, and I'm sure you'll all know where it came from, and it is it's relating to this tourist tax. We contend that for a nation to try to tax itself into prosperity is like a man standing in a bucket and trying to lift himself up by the handle. I would appeal to my colleagues across the chamber. This is not a cash cow. This is not a substitute for the financial problems that face us in the next year. If we vote to pause this immediately and not proceed any further with it, we'll be sending a message that businesses of all sorts, not just the tourist businesses, are welcome here in Perth and Kinross.
Oops. Okay, thank you. Councillor Duff.
Thank you, convener. In February, we agreed to consult on a visitor levy. That consultation resulted in nearly 1,600 responses. And as we have heard today, the vast majority, nearly 70%, oppose the introduction of a visitor levy. This comes not just from businesses involved, but from residents and visitors too. In our consultation, we ask for many nuanced views, but the key unequivocal question is, do you support the idea of a visitor levy in Perth and Kinross? And the answer was a resounding no. Having consulted, we must listen to the voices of those we have consulted. And these voices are telling us that the introduction of a visitor levy in Perth and Kinross will be detrimental to our tourism industry. This is an industry which continues to struggle post-COVID, with tourism levels and tourist spend still below their expected levels. Energy costs, which have skyrocketed, employee cost increases, rising cost of living prices for food and repairs, changes in taxation, short-term licensing costs, booking platforms which cut into profit margins, which for many are already wafer thin. A visitor levy will only have one outcome: fewer tourists coming to Perth and Kinross, when we state that our goal is to increase visitors and the length of visitor stays. And for those tourists who are coming, the average tourist spend is already lower due to the current cost of holidaying in this country. I can understand the attraction to some of imposing a visitor levy, but the stakes are too high to gamble with our extremely important visitor economy. This is an industry worth £641 million within Perth and Kinross, and it keeps 8,200 of our constituents in employment. The imposition of a visitor levy will reduce visitor numbers, which will not only have a detrimental impact on our accommodation sector, but will also reduce the number of visitors who will visit our cafes, our pubs, our restaurants, our shops, and our visitor attractions, and thereby impact jobs. I note in the paper that the Scottish Government are looking to make changes to certain aspects of the legislation. All of these concerns were raised by the industry long before the legislation was introduced, but the Scottish Government didn't listen during that consultation with the industry. The leader of the council states that our consultation is different and is genuinely about listening to visitors, local businesses and the community. Well, convener, the visitors, local businesses and the community have spoken. Let's hope that you, convener, and all the members of this committee are listening. Many local authorities have rejected the visitor levy. It is time to bring this matter to an end here too and state that Perth and Kinross also rejects the visitor levy. I'm happy to second the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Duff. Are there any further amendments? No. Okay, so I'm going to move to comments, and I'm going to start with my own, which is to say, first and foremost, that when visitor levy came to this committee in February, I gave a personal commitment in response to legitimate challenge from Councillor Forbes, when I said that, and I quote, "If we do make a decision to do this, we must shape any visitor levy to maximise the benefits and minimise any downsides." And I also gave a clear assurance that I wanted elected members to be involved every step of the way. And I believe I have done everything I can to fulfil these commitments. I also gave another commitment, and that was a commitment to bring the matter of visitor levy to full council, and I intend to honour that commitment also, because it is right that an issue of this importance is addressed by full council. This report this afternoon has been brought forward at this time because this is when we hoped to be able to take things forward, but we've heard the reasons for the slight delay in the processes here, and the points that Serge and Steve and Suzanne as well have made eloquently this afternoon is about the need to respect the qualitative input of those who have responded to the consultation and the survey. And so the qualitative element is so vital here, as we've heard on numerous occasions, that I think, in fact, I know that we owe it to everybody who lives in Perth and Kinross, including those who have not responded to the survey, the full population of Perth and Kinross, to give this proposition of a visitor levy the full respect that we promised and that I, as convener, promised earlier this year. So I will close with that and invite any further comments that are coming from other elected members. And I see Councillor Robertson. Oh, sorry, beg your pardon. Councillor Kugali.
Thanks. I'll keep it short, but this does very much feel like somewhat of a sword of Damocles hanging over an industry that we've talked about being incredibly important. And it's hard, I think, and it will be for people watching this, to square this discussion with the one that we had in the previous paper. And look, ultimately, we need to give the industry confidence, and the best thing that we can do to do that is to accept the amendment, I think.
Thank you, and apologies, Councillor Donaldson. You half an hour ago you put in for a comment, so you're next.
Thank you, convener. I thought earlier on an element of consensus was developing between Councillor Forbes and myself, but that's not proving to be. And indeed, I reject his amendment and also the comments of Councillor Duff. My one disappointment is that we cannot implement the visitor levy until 2028 unless there's some changes in the legislation. But nonetheless, I believe that what we're doing is right. I think it's prudent, and we look at the changing circumstances. That also may change the views of businesses and of residents in Perth and Kinross. I also welcome the change of approach. Again, I think the Scottish Government, I don't think its weakness is actually at all. I think it's listening to the views and the feedback they've been getting. I think in particular, the fact that there may well be a fixed rate, or in particular a tiered rate, because there's a question of fairness here, I think is to be welcomed. I think it's probably most straightforward to understand. I'll be frank, I'm not fully au fait with all the items on VAT, and one of the problems of VAT is that it's a UK tax. I know, for instance, the budget next week, the Liberal Democrats are arguing for a reduction in VAT on entertainment and hospitality. I think that's right, because I think it would generate more revenue as well. I wished in Scotland we had the position similar to the Isle of Man. And you may find that surprising, but there they have one derogation they have from VAT is on overnight stays. And I really do wish in Scotland we had that power. We don't. But I think what we can't overlook, and there's going to be more consultation. What we've had is early engagement, but a visitor levy, and it's on the Moffat Centre research. Now that could alter with changing circumstances. But I think the estimate is at 5%, is it could raise between 8.2 and 9.3 million. Even at 3%, you're talking a figure of 5.25 million. Now that would be significant. And if you turn to the next page, it's for area promotion and destination marketing. And this is what we were talking about earlier on branding and how we sell ourselves in our communities. And I think that's important. But I think in particular it's on investment in infrastructure, where any funds that are raised can also be used. Now I think it's a balance here and what you arrive at, but can be used to finance capital expenditure. But I agree entirely with what the convener is saying, that any funds raised are not for going into the general pot. That's not what we're thinking about. This goes into tourism-related infrastructure and investment. But some of that, for instance, areas such as core paths, could be of considerable benefit to local residents as well. There's no problem with that. But I think to simply say, no, we're not proceeding any further. We don't want to know about it. Too much trouble. It's going to cost us. It's doom and gloom. I think it's entirely the wrong approach. I actually think a tourism levy, and it is a levy. Remember, in many parts of Europe, I think I'm right in saying in Turkey and in Spain, people pay a visitor levy and it causes virtually no problems. People, they accept it. It's not a major block to tourism. So I really do think we've got and should proceed with this, but we need to look at the detail and the analysis, and there'll be a lot more to come. But it is so important to benefit the people of Perth and Kinross, of our communities, and I support this paper and reject the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
Thank you, Convener. I'm minded to support the paper, but after listening to Councillor Donaldson, I'm not sure if I will or not. Visitor levies are with us. I'm looking forward to hearing how Councillor Forbes, Councillor Kilgallie and Councillor Duff get on when they go to Edinburgh to stay the next time, when they say they're conscientious objectors and don't pay the levy and they get chucked out in the street. I think you'll probably find that they've paid the visitor levy in many other places in Europe and the rest of the world. It's a thing we've just got to accept. The point that Councillor Donaldson made, and you did, Convener, as well, is that, and I've been involved in as Councillor Donaldson has, in the Perth and Kinross Countryside Trust. We depend in Perth and Kinross for the beauty of our area, for the fact that our paths are well maintained. You can access the mountains and the countryside, you can cycle and walk. And I think that's a very important thing. But we build paths, but we can't maintain them. We need to have a source of funding which allows us to do that. And you won't attract tourists, unfortunately, if your infrastructure is dreadful. I've been to places where I've had to pay a visitor levy, and you notice the quality of your surroundings. You notice where the money's been spent. And I think if we raise our money here that we spend in our infrastructure, a lot of that money will be spent locally, which also means jobs for people. So I'm quite happy to support the paper as it is and look forward to the new paper coming forward next year. Thank you.
I'll forego, it's fine.
Okay, if there are no further comments, I would just reiterate that my understanding is that this committee, rather than just myself, this full committee previously gave assurance that visitor levy would come to full council, and I will continue to pursue that and ensure it does come to full council. So without any further ado, is there any summing up? Yes, Councillor Forbes.
Thank you very much. I think I can see the way the vote is going, and that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue whatsoever with standing behind the vital tourist industry for Perth and Kinross. It sends a message not just to the tourist industry, but it sends a message to all industry that they're welcome here in Perth and Kinross, that we are open for business and we want to encourage them to come here. I am so glad I am not in the tourist industry in Perth and Kinross at this point in time. I honestly think it's absolutely shameful that the administration, and by the sounds of it, the Liberal Democrats, are so obsessed by raising tax, and they see it simply as a cash cow, that they will do something which I think will have a detrimental impact on our tourist industry. And as Councillor Kilgallie quite rightly said, this is a sort of Damocles hanging over not just the short-term let market, the wider tourist market, and by extension, all business in Perth and Kinross. And frankly, shame on anyone in this chamber who will do anything to damage one of the biggest industries that we have in this area. But let's go to the vote and see who's got the courage.
Thank you for that. And can we just go to the vote now, Adam?
Thanks, convener. We're dealing with item 7 on today's agenda, which is the visitor levy scheme, early engagement and future timescales. We'll go to a roll call vote in line with council standing orders. We have a motion proposed by Councillor Drysdale, seconded by Councillor Welsh, which is to approve the recommendations as set out in the report. We have an amendment proposed by Councillor Forbes, seconded by Councillor Duff, the terms of which have been displayed on the screen in the chamber. When I call your name, if you can indicate whether you're voting for the motion or the amendment. Councillor Anderson.
With great pleasure, I vote for the amendment.
Motion.
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 Amendment.
Amendment.
Motion.
Councillor Kogali.
Councillor Kogali, if you cannot hear or you cannot speak, can you put it in the chat, please?
Motion.
Amendment.
Amendment.
Motion.
Okay, thank you very much. That therefore concludes business for today, and once again, apologies for the issue.